Well, good morning, Birmingham. I want to thank you all for coming out here on a Saturday morning. And we've got quite an exciting lineup for you today. We've got John McDonnell, the future Chancellor of the Exchequer. We've got superstar actress Maddy Hill, who you might know as Nancy Carter from EastEnders. And then finally, to top it all off, we've got the next Prime Minister of Great Britain. Now, feeling the energy today, especially the man in front of me with the red hat and the red suit on, who deserves a prize. It's clear that you're all here because, like me, you believe and you know that another world is possible. You're hungry for change, and you should be hungry because we have faced 7 years of horrific cuts to the vulnerable, whilst the Tories have slashed taxes for the most privileged. 7 years where our NHS has been starved of funding and broken up as a preemptive strike to make it privatised. 7 years where our schools, industries and education system has been starved of funding, trampling on the hopes and dreams of future generations. Get 'em out! And then we've got 7 years of stagnating wages, where people are worse off now than they were before the financial crash. Now, this is Britain run by the Tories. This is the rigged economy, looking after a privileged few. And only this week they went one step further when they savagely attacked pensioners, removing the triple lock, taking the winter fuel allowance away from 5 out of 6 pensioners in Great Britain, reforming social care so that you'll have to sell your own home to get basic care, and increasing the pension age. This is what they think of those great people who sweated blood and tears to make Britain the country it is. This is the thanks that they're giving to pensioners. But look, we know that Labour would do things differently. Many of you have probably read our manifesto already, and you'll see that this isn't a manifesto that just tinkers around with the edges. It doesn't accept that things have to be this way. It's a transformational manifesto that will transform Britain. It will build an economy fit for the 21st century, and it will make sure that prosperity is shared by the many. A Britain for the many, not the few. So without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you the next Chancellor of the Exchequer, John McDonnell.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Okay. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Come on, John.
Thanks a lot for that. Thanks a lot for that wonderful Brom reception. It's what we always get when we come to this wonderful city. Let me just say this week we saw the launch of our manifesto. radical but in-depth, the basis of ideas consulted on throughout our movement and throughout our country, and yes, fully costed. Fully costed. And you know, I'm not sure if you believe opinion polls, but you know, in one opinion poll, we shot up 8 points after the launch of that manifesto. And then we saw the launch of the Tory manifesto. There were 60 uncosted pledges in that manifesto. Now, it might be there were no pound signs in that manifesto, because there's one thing Theresa May and I share in common. Neither of us trust Philip Hammond. But I think that manifesto from the Tories, the mask slipped a bit. It showed absolute contempt for the British people. They think that this election is already in the bag, and they can treat people however they wish. And it's a reflection of what would happen if they did get back into power. And I tell you, that attack on the pensioners in the 5th richest country in the world was a disgrace, absolute disgrace. They want to break the triple lock. We've been campaigning for years, haven't we, as a party, to lift pensioners out of poverty. And under Labour government, we lifted 900,000 pensioners out of poverty. But there are still nearly 2 million pensioners in this country living in poverty. And the Tory answer to that is to break the triple lock and put pensions at risk for the future. We did a calculation saying if that triple lock had been broken, it was down to a double lock only for the last couple of years, pensioners would have lost about £330 a year. But also they then went on to the winter fuel payments. We have, let's be clear, we have 1 million pensioners living in fuel poverty. 30,000 excess deaths every winter. They don't have that in Scandinavia or Nordic countries, which are much colder than ours. Why do we have those excess deaths? Because pensioners are cold in winter. They can't heat their homes because the energy prices are so high and because insulation is so poor. And yet they won't give us the exact figures, and we tried to press them time and time again. But the suspicion is this, that they want to save maybe up to £2 billion on winter fuel. That means basically 10 million pensioners losing winter fuel allowance. And they say, well, don't worry, it will still go to the poorest, those on pensioner credits. A third of people who qualify for pensioner credits don't claim it. Why? Because the form's 19 pages long. It's difficult. It's difficult, of course it is. So this is cynical. They know they want to cut the winter fuel allowance, and they know at least a third of the poorest won't even claim it. And that's how they'll save their money, by forcing pensioners yet again in this country to choose in winter between heating or eating. 5th richest country in the world. That's a disgrace, isn't it? Yeah. Absolute disgrace. And you know, they then come for social care. There's a crisis in social care at the moment. Yes, because there's an aging population, dementia is a tragedy. Many of us have had it in our own families, and it's been an absolute tragedy. There's nothing worse than when you see a parent like that and you're having to tell your parents you have to sell their home. Nothing worse. But I tell you, some part of that cause is 4.6 billion being cut from social care under the Tories over the last 7 years. That's what they did. And the Care Quality Commission says what? It's reached social care into a tipping point, into a crisis already, because of Tory cuts. Now, we want a fair system of social care for the future, where we pool the risk. So it isn't a dementia tax, so the risk isn't dependent on what condition you have. We want to pool the risk. That's why we're going to establish a national care service. We promised to put 8 billion costed funding into the care service to stabilise it and then start building of a national care service. And we've said to the other political parties, we're willing to enter into talks to look at how we can make sure it's sustainable and look at the funding options. But the way the Tories are pushing this through at the moment, yes, it is a triple whammy. You know, you cut the pension, you cut the winter fuel allowance, and then you undermine the prospect of decent care for everybody. Fifth richest country in the world, it's a disgrace. And they're doing it. They're doing it. They're doing it because they think they can take older people's votes for granted. They think older people aren't going to go anywhere else, so we can treat them how we like. Well, I think in this election they're going to get a shock. They're going to get a shock. So there's anger out there because of this. But the other thing as well, you look at that manifesto too. There's hardly a word about young people in that manifesto. Hardly a word. They're willing to continue on loading up our young people with debt as a result of tuition fees purely because they aspire to a higher education. And they do nothing about skills training for those youngsters who want to get the skill that will qualify them for the higher skilled, high wage jobs. Why? Because they think they don't have to bother about young people, because young people to them don't matter because they don't vote. Well, I tell you, young people matter to us. We believe education, we believe education is a gift from one generation to another. It is not a commodity to be bought and sold. That's why, yes, we will scrap tuition fees. We will get rid of it. So I say to those older people that have been treated in such contempt by the Conservatives this week, show your anger. Show your anger by voting Labour in this general election. And I say to the young people, show just what you think of the Tories, because they think you're not going to vote. I say to young people now, in these last hours, if you're not registered, register. And when you register, you turn this election into a young person's election. And you turn out and vote. Because we want to create a society where all generations come together and work together, where everybody has a future, and where we create that prosperity that's shared by all. Yes, a society for the many, not the few. Now, I tell you this now. In these last few days in the run-up to the election, this last 2.5 weeks, we have the opportunity of a lifetime, don't we? Yes. The opportunity of a lifetime of electing a government with an honest and decent and principled leader that will transform our society. The Tories, I warn you, the Tories are losing on policy debates. In fact, Theresa May runs and hides and won't even debate with Jeremy on television. So what they will do is turn to personality, and there will be vicious personal attacks. Wait for it. I tell you, that's inevitable from these Tories. But we will rise above that. We will debate policy after policy, wherever they want to debate it. But more importantly, We'll argue those policies on the doorstep in this next 2.5 weeks. So I say this to you. It's all to play for. Let's get out there and win this election. Let's carpe diem. Let's seize this opportunity. With courage and determination, we can win this election. Despite what they've thrown at us, we can convince people that we can transform our society. And we can do it through courage, determination, and yes, above all else, that principle we have in the Labour Party, solidarity. Solidarity, brothers and sisters. Thank you. I'd like, thanks, thank you. Thank you. I'd like now to introduce one of our stars. Becky has mentioned it already, it's Maddy Hill. Maddy, as you know, is a star of EastEnders and on theatre, etc., is extremely well known. A young woman, young actor, and also what she's also done as part of this election campaign, she's helped in terms of producing videos, starring in videos, to urge young people to register. And I think as a result of that, as a result of young actors and entertainers and others coming forward over the last few weeks, we've seen a surge of young people register to vote, to exercise their democratic rights. Maddy Hill.
I'm not used to this. Hello, lovely people. Thank you all so much for being here this morning and for the incredible support that you're giving to Labour and to Jeremy Corbyn. The choice in this general election really couldn't be clearer. It's between a Labour Party that looks after the many, and it's against a Tory party that looks after the privileged few. Now, under the Tories, our NHS and social care are in a state of emergency. More than 4 million children in Britain are living in poverty, while the Tories let some of the wealthiest people get away with paying much less than their fair share to keep our public services in good health. We have the chance to change this. We can elect a government that will look out for everyone, a government led by Jeremy Corbyn. Now, I'm voting Labour because they will invest £6 billion in our schools. I'm voting Labour because they will save our NHS and our social care. Because they will end student tuition fees. And build 1 million new homes to tackle the Tory housing crisis. And I am voting Labour because they will invest in a future that offers equal opportunities for all. But millions of people in this country are not registered to vote. And if you lose your vote, you lose your voice. You lose your chance to have a say in things, to make sure that we build the kind of society that we all want to live in. Now is the time to take the opportunity to make sure your voice is heard. You have until this Monday, the 22nd of May, to register for a vote. It's really quick and easy. It literally takes 3 minutes to register online. And that is 3 minutes to have a say in a decision that will last for 5 years and that will change the face of our country. Britain needs a government that looks out for everyone. This is our chance for a fresh start with a Labour government. A Labour government where no one is held back. A government for the many, not for the privileged few. And a government that will protect our public services. Don't stay silent. Register to vote before midnight on Monday and then use that vote on the 8th of June.
Get out and vote for a Labour government under Jeremy Corbyn, a government that will stand up for you and for all of us. And now, it gives me great pleasure to welcome the leader of the Labour Party and our next Prime Minister, Jeremy Corbyn.
Thanks, guys. Thank you. Thank you very much, all of you, for being here today. Fantastic to see you all here today. And I say apologies to the many, many, many people who tried to come to this event, but it was already full, so they'll be following us online or on TV. Thank you to them for their support, and I hope you enjoy this event, because there's a great mood and spirit here that we're moving on to win this election. Is that right? And I want to say a big thank you to Becky Long-Bailey for what she said earlier and all that she's doing in this campaign. And the fantastic work she's done in holding this government to account. Becky, well done you. And to my great friend John McDonnell for the work he's done as Shadow Chancellor. And in John, you'll have a Chancellor of the Exchequer who will do the sums, who will present the... No, that's not a joke, this is serious now. Who will do the sums and will look at all the options. But in John's mind will always be the effects of every policy we make on the most vulnerable and the poorest in our society. So his will be an economic policy that works to improve the lot of the poorest and most vulnerable in our society, not give tax handouts to those that don't need them. And to Maddy, thank you very much for coming today, what you said, and your spirit and your determination and your voice of young people, because yours is the voice of the future. Maddy, thank you very much for what you said today. Over the last week, the dividing lines in this election have got very clear and indeed very sharp. We published our manifesto, another party set out theirs. This is ours. Ours is detailed. Ours is a serious and effective set of proposals, and every one of the pledges in there is costed and paid for and will be delivered. We don't just have a vision, we have it fully costed, as I've explained. By contrast, the other party, which the leader seems to have trouble mentioning the name of, but I believe they're called the Conservative Party, are offering blank cheques made out of misery. But the contrast is more substantial than that. I believe that the difference is this. Where the Tories look to divide, we, Labour, seek to bring people together. The Tory manifesto must be the most divisive for many elections. They're now pitching young against old. The manifesto is typical of what a very well-known person once called the nasty party, as they attempt to set one generation against another. So, for pensioners, they offer a triple whammy of misery. Ending the triple lock, which protects pensioner incomes, means testing the winter fuel allowance, and slapping a compassion tax on those who need social care by making them pay for it by using their homes. Some claim that cutting support for the elderly is necessary to give more help to the young. But young people are being offered no hope by the Tories either. Loaded with tuition fee debts, with next to no chance of a home of their own, or a stable or secure job. We, on the other hand, stand for the unity across all ages and all regions of this country. It is simply wrong to claim that young people can only be given a fair deal at the expense of the old, or vice versa. We, in this hall and in every street across the country, know that the reality is we all depend on each other. That is why we're calling on the Tories to drop their anti-pensioner package immediately. Yes. Older people should not be turned into a political football in this election at the behest of the Prime Minister. And we promise that a Labour government will make education free at all levels and build the homes young people and young families need. Offering the security of a home for life. It's something many dream about. We want to make it a reality. Because our manifesto, this party, stands for the many against a government by and for the few. We say that if we all stand together, we can build a fairer country. There is no trade-off between young and old. And there should be no trade-off at all. Society should not be setting the future of our young against the security of our old. I find it deeply offensive that we should get into this kind of discussion and debate. Older people who've made such a fantastic contribution to our society and in retirement continue to make that contribution in voluntary activities, in inspiring people, in supporting young people, and young people who seek the advice and solace of older people. It's not a war between generations. It's a unity of generations to create a better society for all. And we do have the wealth in this country to create that society if we choose to do it. Our proposals will ask the top 5% of earners and the very big corporations to pay a bit more to help address these problems. So that way we can make sure that young people can get homes and pensioners can heat their homes in winter. That way, students can leave college without a huge burden of debt, and older people can have their income protected through the triple lock, which only Labour are guaranteeing in this election. And I'll tell you what, this message is getting through. Get on any bus, get on any train, go in any cafe and talk to people. The whole discussion and the whole debate is unravelling from the Tory point of view, because people are saying, hang on, why are so many young people in such stress? Why are so many older people being threatened by this government? Can't we as a society, as a country, as a people, do things differently and better? And I tell you what, we will. I really don't want to intrude on private grief, but the ink wasn't even dry on the Tory manifesto, because for some of their own candidates and former MPs were itching to attack it because of its attack on the elderly, because they know it's not right and not fair what they're proposing. They may even suspect that some people won't want to vote for it. And that will probably concentrate their minds. So I say to the Prime Minister, you have it to end the anxiety for millions of older people now. Why not try a handbrake turn, a U-turn, something like that, and you'd end up facing the right way. It's worth a try. And so, yes, our proposals are about pensions, are about security, but they're also about recognising the massive contribution that older people make to our society in all the ways that I've described, but also the very deep loneliness that many old people live under. We can change our attitudes in society, all of us, to be a bit more inclusive of those suffering stress, inclusive of those that are alone. Because societies doing things together are stronger. And you know what? They achieve things together because they're stronger, because they're together. And to the many young people who have registered to vote or will be voting for the first time, or the many young people that have got involved in a discussion and debate about politics for the first time, I just want to say this, and it's right that I do so, in Britain's youngest city, where 40% of the people of Birmingham are under the age of 25. But it's also a city where 10% of young people are out of work, which is more than twice the national average. In a region where poverty is increasing. Here in the West Midlands, 1 child in 3, 1 in 3 is living in poverty. Sure Start was one of the best achievements of the last Labour government. And I'm very proud of what Sure Start achieved, and I find it quite shocking that this government has not defended Sure Start, and all over the country Sure Start centres have been closed, and that sense of inclusion of all generations in the centre and support for the parents as well as the children is being lost. It's not going to go on any longer with the Labour government, I tell you that. It'll be very different. So, I want to build on that. Instead of cutting back on school meals, we will ensure every child gets a free school meal in primary school with no stigma as a right for every child. How can children learn when they're hungry? How can they concentrate when they're hungry? We surely have a responsibility as a society to help all children, whatever the postcode of their birth or their living, because we want to be there for everybody. But things are made even more difficult in the West Midlands on housing. House prices have risen by 5% over the last year. Wages are still lower in real terms than they were in 2008. It all adds up to the worst thing for so many young people: despair and the loss of hope. Loss of hope for a decent, secure job. Hope that you will one day be able to get a home you can call your own. Hope that you can enjoy an education without the fear of crippling debt. We speak, I believe quite rightly, about left behind communities. There are many all over the country, alas here also in the West Midlands. There's also a danger of creating a left-behind generation, enjoying few of the chances and none of the advantages that their parents may have had. So when we launched our manifesto on Tuesday in Bradford, I said this, and I believe it very strongly. Labour's approach is based on hope. And this is our offer to young people. Labour will scrap tuition fees and lift the shadow of debt from students. The Tories won't do that. Labour will invest in jobs, skills and training across all regions, including here in our traditional industrial heartland. The Tories won't do that. Labour will build more than 1 million new homes over 5 years, with more than half being social housing for rent. The Tories won't do that. This is the sort of policy our young people have a right to expect from politicians. After all, in offering the next generation free education and the chance of a job and a home, we're only offering what really ought to be regarded as basic human rights. In return, I think we have the right to ask just one thing of young people today: register to vote. This weekend is your last chance to register, the last chance to make sure you can vote and vote Labour on June the 8th. But let me be clear to all young people. I want you to vote Labour, but above all, I want you to vote. It's a right that was won by the sacrifices of many down the generations, and we have to exercise that right. It's our power to bring about change in society by the vote through the ballot box. If you're not registered, you can't get anywhere near the ballot box. So go for it and register. It's a right that some in the establishment would diminish or take away. So let's dispel once and for all the myth that young people are apathetic about society by getting everyone on the electoral register and then getting down to the polling stations on June the 8th. I was asked once about young people and politics and why they weren't involved. And I put it this way: I don't think young people ever left politics. I think politics left young people. And so, in this manifesto, and in the way we present our campaign and our policies, we are bringing politics back to the rising generation. Young or old, somewhere in between, we're all the same, in the same communities, in the same country. Basically, we sink or swim together. When the Tories offered tax cuts to their rich friends, we say, let's make life livable for the many first. When the Tories want to balance the books on the backs of the most vulnerable, we say, let's tell the wealthy and big corporations to start paying the tax they owe. Simple choices, but ones that will make a difference to millions of people's lives. And there's a simple choice before the country in this election. The Labour way of working for the good of the entire community, or the Tory way, which is perpetuating grotesque levels of inequality that already exist in our society. Look around you in this wonderful hall today. We're young, we're old, we're black, we're white, we're gay, we're straight, we're men, we're women, we have disabilities, we don't have disabilities, we have concerns, we lead good and happy lives. When we come together and we share the success and the problems and the stress, we are very strong. When we respect each other's traditions and faiths and communities and past, we're a stronger society and a community. When we allow ourselves to be divided, when we allow people to scapegoat people because they're poor, because they're homeless, or for whatever other reason they want, we're all diminished and weakened as a people and a society. Individually, all of us in this hall, if we saw somebody in distress, we wouldn't walk by on the other side. We wouldn't ignore somebody in their stress and their hardship they're going through. We would reach out and support them. Can't we carry those principles into how we conduct ourselves in the way we run government and society as a whole? So, we don't ignore the homeless or the desperate or the lonely. We don't ignore those that are trying to get on but finding it difficult and need a bit of help and support. We don't ignore those that are having problems over housing or anything else. We instead develop policies and develop a whole attitude that reaches out to the entire population and the entire community. Because that is the way you build strong societies. Strong societies achieve great things. That wonderful post-war generation brought us the National Health Service and the welfare state and so many good things in our society. Somewhere along the line, greed took over and privatization took over and so many other things took over. And you end up... please. Took over, and we ended up with a more divided society and greater levels of inequality and a government in office at the moment that is actually perpetuating greater levels of inequality were they to remain in office. I know which way I've chosen. I've chosen the Labour way of all of us doing things together. And in this election, in the less than 3 weeks till the election is held, I invite everyone to get involved in a conversation in their community, to get involved in a conversation about the kind of society and kind of world we can live in. Get involved in how we can do things together better. So, I simply say this: the Labour way, for the many, not the few. Thank you very much, Birmingham.